Okay, welcome back everyone, Mark Session again, and we will follow with a photobashing tutorial. And so next part will be clean up some of the layers and also make basic color corrections. So first of all, we want to focus on this set. So the control, let the control layer be selected, and my goal is to blend this foreground with the original image. So for now, just adding a new layer will help us on the way, and this layer is now ready to be painted. So be careful not work on the actual color layer, work on the mask layer. We are needed a brush. It's if I press B, it will switch to your brush. Right now we can cycle through the different brushes by pressing Shift B, and the brush I'm looking for is a standard paintbrush. And we need some kind of a pattern. So let me quick anything that's a little bit rougher, okay? And Alt and right click is the way to adjust the diameter, and if you're going up and down, that will adjust opacity. So right now the color I'm painting is not visible at all because it is white. So let me switch with X, and now as you see, it chips away the paint. The problem with that is it's a little bit strong, so let me just walk through and just erase the edges. So I'm softening up the edges, and then I can use Alt right click and reduce opacity. And if the opacity is a little bit reduced, now the blending will be a little bit softer, so even softer. Alright, so that can help me. I'm using a mouse, so there's no tablet involved here. So just blending this. Okay, it's looking quite promising. Alright, zooming out. Yeah, it's not bad. So if I'm turning off the visibilities, so disable layer mask, this is the original. Right click and enable layer mask, this is what I have. So now it's ready, and we have a kind of a blend area. Okay, another question is to cut this a pressure chamber. So this pressure chamber has plenty of handlebars, and we want to remove the background, so it takes a lot of time. So let me switch to the Lasso tool, and you will see this in a speed up manner in the video. Okay, so let me start, and don't forget you can use Alt key to remove from your selection, Shift key to add to your selection, and right now, because I don't want to keep it, I'm not afraid to delete permanently these pixels. So I'm using Shift and Add, and this is how it will be done. Okay, so here we go. This is our live selection. Let me just delete those. Okay, Ctrl H will show and hide the selection. So Ctrl H, I can hide it away. And actually there are a couple things missed, so let me cut those through. So Ctrl D, deselect, even if the selection is not visible, Ctrl D will act like a deselect function. So let me complete this one. And delete. Okay, here we go. So now this cutout is fairly nice. Okay, so what's up next? Yes, this area is a little bit darker. So what we have to take care of is the shadow under the pressure chamber. Now, to make that shadow, I can just create a selection. So this is the running selection. We can add a strong feather and right click where we are, feather at 50 pixel. It's fairly big. So the point of it is I will use the brush with a basic softer brush, relatively big size, and create a new solid color layer. And this solid color layer will be a little bit of brownish, not that much, but yeah. Okay, of course it has to be under the pressure chamber, and the blending mode will be something else. Normal is basically means it is a simple standard color. It has no effects over the underlying structures, underlying layers. But when you're choosing a different blending mode, it will define the interaction between the layers. So this top layer will be added or removed or somehow affect the appearance of the layers beneath. So the best option was about this, not hard mix, but this hard light. Or usually multiply or darken can an overlay can do wonders. Now overlay is not working properly here, but multiply is a good option. The problem with that is now I see the layers picking up the colors from below, but the problem is it's way too strong. So what we need to do is reduce the fill a little bit, so it is there, and just fine-tune the strength around. Now, for fine-tuning the strength, I will pick the layer, the mask. The brush is active, and as you see, I'm painting now. Opacity is fairly low. Okay, let me increase the size, so it will remove slightly. So this is when it's turned off, and this is when it's turned back on. Okay, probably I need to select the pressure chamber and the color fill, so I'm using Control and clicking on both of the layers and just using the move tool and nudging them down. Okay, so that's where we are. Now the other thing is, yes, this shadow is working fine, but somehow this layer is a little bit too bright now. So the pressure chamber should be a little bit darker. Now I want to add an adjustment layer over this pressure chamber, but my problem is that I have to tailor the adjustment layer to fit to this pressure chamber. For this reason, I will hold down the Control and clicking in the thumbnail of the pressure chamber, and that is load. So that's loading selection. So now if you have something that is already cut out, you can actually hold down Control and load your selection. Now once it is selected, I can go in and choose the adjustment layers, and I will choose an exposure, and now the exposure is applied only to that particular area. Okay, so it's quite drastical. I don't want to be that strong with that. So I just want to darken it a little bit. Not much, just a little bit. Okay, so this is what happens. This was the original, and this is the darkened version. Now, if I want to create a blend, I can paint on this layer. So let me go switch back to brush, and if I want to make a few parts lighter, the top part I want to make it lighter, but the bottom, if it's darker a little bit, that's absolutely fine. and maybe the color fill. Now I can bring back up the color fill a bit more. Okay, so I can add more shadows to that area. Okay, it looks nice. Now, once we know this control clicking trick, we can use it on the tree as well, because this green is beautiful, it's nice, but it is a little bit strong. I'm afraid we should start with the sky instead of the tree, because the sky is, this blue is so dominant, we want to suppress it a little bit. So let me go and select the sky. Now that's our level. And when we are adding the new hue saturation, for example, adjustment layer, it's above the sky. And let me dial down the saturation a bit and change the hue. So, oh yeah, I want to make it closer to the tree, so less blue, more green, and also remove the saturation a bit. Okay, if it's too much, it might be a little bit too strong, and I don't want to keep that. Okay, it's much better. And right now I will dial down the tree a little bit more. I want to make it closer to this brownish look, so that will be the next part. So where is the tree layer? Here's the tree layer, and I'm using the trick, so I'm holding down Control and creating the adjustment layer of hue saturation, and reduce the saturation a bit and change it to a little bit more of a greenish, but it is a light green. Okay, so this is the original. This is a harsh, stronger green, but this is a little bit softer, more to the yellow. Okay, so more to the yellow, and saturation is lowered a bit. Lightness, I don't want to play with the lightness too much. So that's it. All right. Okay. The top of this area is a little bit dark, so we can create a feeling of light coming in here, because originally this was a fairly badly lit scene. So right now, because right now it's open, we can add more light indoors. So for that, I will use the same technique, but here we have a big question. So here's the layer. And if I'm holding down Control and clicking on the layer, it will select the cutout. But we also have a mask, and the mask also has some areas excluded. So what we do want is we can load them separately. So if I'm holding down Control and clicking on the mask, it will select what the mask is offering. If I'm using Control, it will switch to the thumbnail selection. But if I want to combine the two, I can use Control, Shift, that is a plus, and if I'm holding Alt to this, that means Control, Shift, and Alt and everything, and I'm clicking on the layer, it will just combine all of my selections. So it's a little bit crazy. When you have one selection, it's just Control clicking one selection. So Control always used. If you're using Shift, that will add. If you're using Alt, that is removing. So Shift is adding to the selection, Alt is removing, subtracting from the selection, and Shift and Alt is uniform, a Boolean selection. So it's unifying the elements. So it's combining the two. Okay, sometimes you have to test it out. Right now this is how it works, and with this pending selection I can add an exposure and add more light to the scene. Some areas will show that it's too much, but it's making good with the ceiling. Okay, so that works pretty fine there. And I have to dial down this exposure later on here. Okay, so let me OK this exposure gamma. Okay, just test it out. Alright, I don't want to go crazy. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so this is the original, fairly dark. Now it's much brighter. And of course we have to select and keep the layer, the mask selected. We can go to the brush, and one problem can appear if you are switching to X. So a typical situation, if you are just using this black brush and painting over, it is just removing. But if you change your mind and you want to switch with X and start painting back, now the problem will appear because right now it will work on everything. Alright, so it will mask previously unmasked areas too, alright, because you're adding back. To avoid that, what you can do is, let me undo this. I hope I have enough undos to do this. So here we are. So if you want to add, what you can do is holding down Control and loading your existing mask. And this way, if you are just using X painting with the black, now you're removing. But when you're changing your mind and using X again to paint back, your pending selection is protecting you to paint over the sky or any other areas. Alright, so this is why I like to control click, loading the selection of the mask, and now I have my limitations, now I have the range, so I can switch it back and forth. If I want to add, I can do that. If I want to remove, I can do that as well. Okay, so now I want to remove more from here. Okay, just if you are disturbed by the pending selection, you can always use the Control H command to hide it, but please keep that in mind, it is still active. So if you want to remove and adding back, it is still active, so the layer does its job. Okay, Control D to deselect, Control H to show, and Control D to deselect. Here is a neat little trick that you can use if you have plenty of layers, and it's a good idea to rename those layers. But even if you don't rename that, whenever you're pressing down Control and right clicking, it will give you a list about the layers in hierarchy. So if I'm Control right click over this layer, it will tell you, okay, this is the turbine layer, or there's an underlying exposure layer. Okay, the layer is selected. If I want to see only this particular layer, I can hold down Shift and Alt and clicking on the eye. So now only that layer is visible, and I can start to work on my lasso selection. So I will do this right now. Okay, let me zoom in and start the work. And delete it. Ctrl D to deselect. If you have many things to select and delete, if there is something going wrong, for example, you are just accidentally clicking away, weird things may happen. So this is why I like to work in chunks, like starting the selection. So let me select something that's a little bit heavier, harder to select. Okay, so this will be, you can start and work on your selection and add to that selection. This way, let me show this. So I'm cutting, and okay, now I'll stop here, then closing my selection, then holding the Shift key to add, and I can start inside this patch, add to the selection. So this way I can split up the selection work. Instead of trying to make it as a one single selection, I can do it patches to patches, and that way if this is what happens usually. So you're selecting and something happens, a call comes in, and you're just accidentally clicking away, and this is what happens. So now you have a smaller error that you can repair by holding down the Alt key and remove from the selection. Okay, so you can repair this, but it's much easier if you have a smaller area to fix. All right, if you are using these smaller patches to the selection, it's especially good if you're cutting out silhouettes, figures, and other elements. Okay, so that's how it goes. Okay, and delete it. Where we are, we still have in this area, and we still have here in the background. So let me zoom in and follow. Here we go, delete. Right. See everything? Alright, it's nice. We still have to work on this area. And now here we go. Now, what else? We definitely want to make some corrections to the turbine, because here at this area is a little bit bright, so it's not working properly for that. So where is the turbine? Control click to load selection, and adding the we can add the levels layer and make it a little bit more dynamic and a little bit more dark. Okay, so it's working fairly nicely. Layers and levels can help a lot to keep it dynamic and visually giving a feedback on this. But this area will be dark, so we have to paint this. But what's going on inside, behind the columns, is really promising, so I will keep this layer as it is. Loading the levels, the painted area, switching to brush, Ctrl H to hide away the selection, and just removing the levels layer from this area. Okay, that's working fine. Alright, so that's regarding to the turbine. What I definitely have to fix and finally add the soldier to this image is this section. Okay, so here at this area we need to cap these pillars, these beams. So these supporting beams right now, because they were just cut off, they have no cross section. So what I do need is to find a concrete picture that shows this cross-sectional area. So let me drag this down and look for the resources, and I need concrete. Yeah, here we go. This is the concrete, and go to Photoshop and open it up and make a selection. So rectangular marquee M is to making the selection for me, and create a shape that's kind of rectangular that fits, and I'm holding down Control, and that way the selection will be cut out, and I can drag and drop just my selection, and Control T, shrink it down, and I will enter this. And because I don't want to destroy this layer, I will hold down Control and Alt. That will switch to an instant copy. Let me close this to make visible these things, and this will be renamed to Concrete Patch. Patch and 001, and Control and Alt and dragging, and now I have Concrete Patch 001 copy. So I can press Ctrl T, zooming in, and fit this to the column. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. Here we go. We're just distorting, and if I'm holding down Control, I can freely change these angles, and I can quite easily distort this patch to fit. Okay, so that's it. Right, move it closer, copy it again. Of course, you can cut new elements, so every time you make this cap for the beams, you can create a new patch of concrete. Right now, I don't want to make it that accurate. My goal here is to speed up the things as much as possible, but still make it easy to understand. Okay, and Control Alt and copy it, and Control T and make it fit, and enter, and going. It's too much, the width was too much, and I will just use a lasso tool to cut off. Control and arrows can help you to nudge a layer. So switching to Control Alt to copy the existing one. Okay, Control and nudge. Alright, so here we go. That's it. This is the original patch. I'm in a move tool, so I don't have to press Control. But if I'm not in the move tool, I can hold down Control and select concrete patch and hit delete. I don't need that layer anymore. Oh, I missed two. Okay, so let me undo this and make a selection and Control T and alright, so here we go. That's it. And what else? We can place that soldier somewhere here, and for that we will use a different method to select and cut out the background. So let me look for resources. Here's the soldier, so I will just drag and drop it here as a separated model. Lock it down, zoom in, and my goal is to cut out everything that's not the soldier. So for that, layer, select color range, and I will pick the white. Now localize color crystals is on. That means I can click anywhere. It will select kind of a range of that area. Now this could be a fairly accurate selection, but only picking one sample is not enough, so I have to add more samples. And I can either click in here in the preview, so that's also a working option, or I can click in here, but right now the preview will give me more feedback. So let me hit OK, and it will select the white areas. Of course I want to have the soldier, so I need to invert the selection. Ctrl Shift I is inverting the selection. So right now I have the soldier selected and this small text. I don't want to include the small text, so I'm using the Alt key to switch to subtract from selection. So I'm holding down Alt key, and now only the figure is selected. Now let me tear this tab down. I want to see the photo bash. Where's the soldier? Here's the soldier. Switch to move tool and drag and drop and place it somewhere here. Now if you are zooming in, you can see that there is a kind of a little bit of a highlight edge. So if we want to make it a little bit more accurate, we can use feather to make a softer cut. I like to use this softer cut solution, so let me delete this layer. Going back here and switch to a selection tool like the rectangular marquee by pressing M, right clicking, and there's feather. and the 50 pixels is way too big, so that was good for creating the shadows, but it's too big for this one. So I would choose just a single 1 pixel. Okay, and now switch to move tool and drag, and zooming in, it will be a little bit softer around. Okay, so can you see it's a little bit softer. It's easier to fix this. Now what else you can do if you want to remove even this uniform highlight? You can load the selection, control. You can Control Shift I, invert selection, and Control H to hide away the selection. And if you hit delete and hit delete a couple times, this edge around will be softer and softer, and it will be removed. Okay, every time you delete the pixels, Photoshop needs to recalculate the image, and because of this recalculation, you're losing the pixels around the edge, and that is actually a benefit. But you have to use feathers to make it fairly effective. Alright, so that's what I did, and zooming in, and I want to place the soldier somewhere here, so Control T. Right, I want to accept this change, switch to Lasso tool. Part of the soldier is not visible, so I will just remove the legs, so delete. And because he's too bright now, first too bright compared to the overall colorization, so I will rename him and Control click to load the selection, and need an adjustment layer. It will be an exposure, and I want to make it a little bit darker, adding more crank to the gamma. And okay, remove some of the exposure. Alright, and yep, that's right. Great. Loading up the selection, Control H to hiding the selection, switching to brush. The size of the brush is too big, so Alt and right click and moving sideways, and I will remove of this exposure layer partially from the front of the figure. Okay, from the front area. Alright, so this is how it looks. Now we have the illusion that the front area of the figure is a little bit lit. Okay, now what else? These are a little bit grayish, so I want to add a kind of a hue saturation to the control. So Control click, holding down Control, clicking into thumbnail, holding Control, Shift and Alt, and clicking on the layer mask. It will create the overall mask that I have actually the visible areas of the image. And now I can add and choose hue saturation and change the saturation a little bit, reduce it, and I want to make it a little bit warmer towards this reddish area. Okay, let me crank up the saturation to make it easier to recognize. Alright, so this is where it becomes a little bit more brownish. Now let me dial down the saturation. Okay, so it blends a little bit better with the surrounding environment. Okay, so that's it. Of course, you can add other things. For example, hue saturation is a great layer to add overall colorization. Just let me quickly demonstrate this, and that is it for this lesson. So let me just select this column, and hue saturation layer works great if you are choosing the colorize option. So here's the column selected, and going in here and choose hue saturation and turn on colorize, and now I can crank up saturation. So let me zoom out, and you can play with the hue. Alright, so if the saturation is too aggressive, of course it won't be that nice, but it can quickly give you an idea about a possible color change. Okay, I would just alter it more to bluish. I think it fits better with the surrounding environment. Let me click OK and let me accept it. Right now I don't want to keep this one. It's a whole different story, but you can add more and more details, more images, covering and selecting and following the logic of the structure. Okay, and one final note, the orientation, the picture crop is not really a cinematic crop, so let me go and switch to standard HD. As you see, areas that are not visible on the screen but are there will be shown, and if I'm hitting on enter, I can actually crop these down. But let me nudge this a little bit. I want to show more of the ground, and hitting enter, and now this is a final kind of a cutout. And if you want to add a layer that helps to make the colors much more closer to each other, you can still use a photo filter, and the swarming filter is, oh, it's not that bad. Okay, it's not that bad. You don't want to be too aggressive with that, but a subtle photo filter can help to grab and keep the colors together. Okay, so this is a very quick and short tutorial on how to create a photobashed scene. I hope you enjoyed and have a couple ideas. It takes some practice, but you will see. Of course, you can do it much better, much easier with different tools, and much faster as well. But for this video and for this record, this is what was suitable. Okay, so thank you very much, and have a good time. See you next time. Goodbye.